Representative, it was a little noisy in here. What's the purpose of this task force? We weren't able to hear on this side. What was the purpose of this task force again, please?
The purpose is to understand how changes in global climate may affect population shifts that could have impacts on the state of Illinois.
So why do we think, or I guess let me ask you this, then do we believe that there's a shift in population in the state of Illinois and that there maybe is a reason for that? Is that your premise?
No, the premise is that globally, around the world, populations are likely to shift in the coming decades as the weather changes, and that those global shifts may have an impact on the state of Illinois, and we want to understand that and be prepared for that in the event that, for instance, there are many new arrivals to our state as a result of climate displacement.
So you're not saying then that there has been a shift in population, and we're just assuming that there's going to be, and we believe that climate is to blame for that, and we want to have a task force to study that.
Certainly there has been a shift in population. This task force is not addressing that question, though.
Yeah. So who all will be on this task force? How many members?
Sorry for not having the exact number, but there's the General Assembly is represented, the IEPA, various executive departments, and appointments from the governor.
So members of all four caucuses will be there, it looks
Correct.
like maybe?
Yes.
At least one from each caucus?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so are these positions compensated for?
No.
Okay. And is there any expense to running this, this task force?
Not to the state, no.
Yeah. And so where will this, I mean, does these task force, are they housed in a certain agency, or is it just a function of the General Assembly?
It won't be housed in a specific agency, no.
Okay, and then as far as staffing it, I mean, will we have to provide staff to be a part of this effort?
No.
Okay, and so if we find that there's a shift in population, what will be the result of that? I mean, how can we definitively tell? Why don't we have a task force that looks at any other regulation that we might create? I know there's been a property tax task force. There's been at least two of those, 2019 and then one again last year, and we're not seeing any positive results of that. But there's lots of other regulations that are causing population shifts. Why are we focusing in on climate, the climate here?
I would certainly encourage you to introduce legislation to create other task forces that are in areas of interest to you, Representative. I would say that climate displacement, there's broad scientific consensus that hundreds of millions of people in the next decades will be required to leave their current homes and move to different parts of the world as a result of changes in the weather. And that may well have an impact on the state of Illinois, and we want to make sure that if it does, we're prepared for it.
So the studies or the information that you're referring to that has led you to create this task force or to bring this legislation forward, what kind of a shift in population, where do people, how far do they have to travel to evade what level of climate change? What does that look like? What level of climate change, and what motivates them to move and how far?
Well, I'm not a climate scientist, and the whole purpose of having this task force is to bring together expertise to help us answer these questions. But I will say that when daily temperatures in the summer are 120 or 130 degrees in parts of this planet where people live, that's not going to be a long-term tenable solution for those people. When island nations see sea levels rise and flooding and storms, hurricanes that cause tremendous displacement and damage, those folks may not be able to live in those places in the future. So we just want to understand what might happen, how it might affect the state of Illinois, and how we can prepare for that in the future.
Well, thank you for your admission to not be a climate scientist. I know there's a lot of legislation comes from your side of the aisle that people seem to perceive to be some level of a climate scientist, and I know you've said that you've read a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of studies, and so you kind of throw out there that if it's 110 degrees, people are going to move. But we have those kind of high temperatures in the desert Southwest, and people move there for those high temps. I'm curious why you have this bias about high temps, and then where are they going to move to northern Alberta? Where do they expect to move? What's the plan here? I'm trying to understand why we're doing this bill, what the premise is, and why we're doing it.
Well, the kinds of questions that you're asking are precisely the kinds of questions that this task force is going to help us get good answers to. Are people moving as a result of changes in the weather? If so, from where and to where? Could we expect that those changes might affect the state of Illinois? Maybe the task force will come back and say, climate displacement will have no impact on our state and we don't need to do anything. That would be a welcome answer. But perhaps the task force will provide us with a roadmap to prepare for future changes to our state's population. And I think better to be prepared than to be caught off guard.
Yeah. Well, again, I think this is kind of pie in the sky. And
bring your remarks to a close, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the bill, ladies and gentlemen of the House, here we go once again. We have these euphoric ideas. We have preconceived notions about what's wrong and what we need to do. These are always kind of problems in search of a solution or a solution in search of a problem, whatever the case might be. I believe this is truly misguided. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had 41 climate disasters predicted since the early to mid 60s, and right now the score is 0 to 41. Again, this is misguided. I think we need to be studying why people are leaving the state of Illinois. It's not about climate hysteria.
Representative, please bring your remarks to a close.
Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we need business reform, we need property tax reform, and with that, I would urge a no vote. Thank you.